Here now to discuss all of this and much more is the editor of Catholic World News, a fellow at Thomas More College, Philip Lawler, who joins us from New Hampshire. Phil, thanks for being with us. Now, given, Phil, that this cause has been ongoing since 2002, it seems the bishops who are now raising objection, they had 17 years to do so, and the documents that they're citing, the concerns they have already been fully investigated by the Vatican. Is this a legitimate holdup in your mind?
I doubt it. I mean, I don't have all the facts, but it certainly doesn't look like a legitimate holdup. It looks more like an effort to rain on the parade. And what was included in the statement from the Diocese of Peoria really rings true to me, that beatification should be a time of rejoicing, a time of celebration. And we now, thanks to our bishops, have made it into a time of controversy and cynicism. It's one more disgrace in the lap of the American hierarchy.
Yeah, it's pitiful to me because, again, people misunderstand what sainthood is, and in this case, a blessed is. All they're saying, all the Vatican is saying, is not that this individual is perfection or a second Jesus. What they're saying is they have heroic virtue and have displayed heroic virtue throughout their lives. That's all the sainthood proclamation insists upon. It is not perfection. So the fact that all of these things have been vetted and there's still another step left in this process is very confusing to me. Why they just wouldn't wait. Do the beatification. You've already gone out. There was the report, CNA had it in their reporting, that there was concern that politicians might use this, and the Attorney General in New York, to time the release of his report and a mention of Sheen with the beatification. Is that a real concern?
Actually, I think that is a real concern. I think we're in a situation where any time any American Catholic prelate is being honored, whether he's living or dead, there will be some political blowback, and some politicians will use the occasion to get some cheap publicity, even if there isn't any realistic criticism of this prelate. And I have no doubt that that could happen in New York, where it's sort of open season on Catholic bishops these days. However, I would also say that if you think you can wait a few months and it will all blow over, you're kidding yourself. I don't foresee any time in the near future when the situation will be much different. So a small postponement probably won't change very much.
No, I agree. And I mean, you mentioned, it's open season on bishops. Well, some of them are guilty, we have to say, Phil. I mean, Malone just retired early. It wasn't because, he didn't like the way the cathedra fit. He retired because of ongoing scandals and reports and assistants coming out and blowing the whistle on him and recordings. I mean, it was an embarrassment. So the Sheen thing just, it strikes me as a moment of grace in the midst of this chaos, a moment of faith that the faithful, the few left, were clinging to. And to take this occasion away from them, it seems it robs them of joy in the midst of the Christmas lead-up and the midst of Advent.
Well, I do agree with you, but I'd add another point, which is it would have been a great moment of grace, a great encouragement for the faithful, if they had gone through with the beatification ceremony, and if a politician tried to cast some aspersions on the memory of Archbishop Sheen, you had Cardinal Dolan and Bishop Matano and others come to his defense enthusiastically and energetically, and really, take the case to the public rather than sort of cowering in the background.
Yeah. Well, we saw this with Junipero Serra. We saw it with John Paul II. There are always people who try to capitalize on these big moments because they're meaningful, they're important, and the eyes of the world are looking at these individuals in the church. But to allow civil authorities to set the timetable for a beatification seems to me wrong-headed. But I guess these bishops are going to be dancing with the Attorney General for a long time. I guess now we're also giving them authority over beatifications. Maybe confirmations next. I don't know what's going on. I want to move to another big story this week, Phil. Pope Francis accepted the resignation of Bishop Richard Malone, whom I referenced a moment ago, in Buffalo. Now, his resignation comes after scandals and the leaked documents I referred to, claims that he covered up sexual abuse. What took so long in this case? Why was the Vatican so slow to respond to these charges?
I have no idea. The Vatican has not been very quick to respond to charges of this sort in dozens of cases at this point. And even now, the Vatican isn't playing by its own rules. It didn't do an investigation of Bishop Malone under the provisions of the document the Pope just put out last year. It did an investigation of the diocese. Now, what came up in that investigation? We don't know. We're not told. We're told that the bishop resigned of his own volition after he had seen the results of the investigation. Well, you and I know that when he saw the results of the investigation, he probably was given a pretty clear indication of what Rome wanted of him.
Yeah.
And what Rome wanted was his resignation. He was in Rome just a few weeks ago for his ad limina visit, and he was asked if it was true that he had resigned, and he said it's absolutely false. Now he discloses that, in fact, he had resigned. So the public statements are really not giving us credit for much intelligence. We don't know what happened. We do know that there's not the level of candor and accountability that we've been promised year after year. It's just not happening.
As you mentioned, there was that October visitation. What is the public owed, Phil? I mean, given the public nature of so much of this story in Buffalo, with the assistant going on 60 Minutes and the document drop, and then the secretary recording the bishop dismissing cases and kind of poo-pooing them, all of that was such a public scandal. Is the public owed something, particularly in that diocese, from the church?
Yes, I think the public is owed an accounting. We don't have to know every gory detail. But I think we have to have an honest accounting for what happened and why. In most institutions, if a leader is forced out because of misfeasance or malfeasance, at least there is some accountability. At least there's some indication given that he didn't go of his own volition. And at least his successor will come in and say he's going to clean house. In that respect, it was a huge breakthrough, I thought, in Wheeling, Charleston, where you had a bishop for the first time in my memory openly criticize his predecessor by name. I can't think of another occasion when that's happened.
No. Albany's Bishop Edward Scharfenberger will serve as the apostolic administrator in Buffalo until a new bishop is appointed. Now, he said he plans to visit the diocese weekly, and when asked about how he would handle an allegation of abuse, he said this.
Immediately. I would first of all say tell the police right away. And then they will follow the normal procedures that we do. And the appropriate thing that's usually done in the case when an allegation like that comes in is that you inform the priest and then you put him on administrative leave. And then you take appropriate steps after that.
Now, this is a response we've heard before, Phil, from other bishops. What needs to be done in Buffalo to restore confidence in your mind?
The first thing that needs to be done is just what I said before, clarity and honesty. One of the things that I've been saying for about 15 years now is the way you restore trust, the way the American bishops can restore trust, is by making some public statements against their own interests. That is, admitting to something that they don't yet have to admit because it's already in the headlines. Admitting to something, breaking the stories themselves. When you say something that's negative about yourself, that increases your own credibility. When you admit your own failings, that increases your own credibility. When they're dragged out by the media or by attorney general or by investigation, that just hampers your own credibility. And that's what's been happening for 20 years now.
Sad. Yeah, well, this Sheen situation, it seems he's been drafted in. It's almost a form of presentism where you judge the past by the present, but he's been drafted in to the woes of the current bishops of New York. The state of New York, along with 15 other states, have new rules that now extend or suspend the statute of limitations. Now, this allows claims of abuse stretching back decades. The Diocese of Rochester has already filed for bankruptcy, and the Diocese of Buffalo has been named in more than 220 recent lawsuits. They've already paid out $18 million to more than 100 victims under a compensation plan. Now, this is just the beginning, Phil. How bad is this going to get, and how do you think it's going to affect the church in the United States and the credibility of the bishops?
Well, the credibility of the bishops can't get much worse than it is now, honestly. I don't mean to be cynical, but as I said earlier, we're in a situation where even a beatification is an opportunity for people to, to pour some more vitriol at the hierarchy. I think it's going to get worse financially. I think you'll have more bankruptcies. You'll have more schools and parishes closed. And I think it will be, in the end, a great purification, because too often the money is caught up in scandals. And just
Right.
by the way, you mentioned that Archbishop Sheen is caught up in this. As I understand it, if you look at the record with a fine-tooth comb, you'll find that when he was a bishop in Rochester, he actually did a very good job
Right.
of handling abuse cases, that it's been thoroughly investigated, that he did what a lot of other bishops should have done.
Right.
So
I
if
mentioned that earlier.
the record were thoroughly exposed, he would look better.
No, it's again, I worry about trying to drag a figure from the past into the present and judge him by present standards. But even with that, even at that bar, Sheen passes, which is rather extraordinary considering all those around him at the time and what they did, and other causes that have been rescinded because of questions related to this. I just think it's a bad idea for the church to go down this path of saying, we're going to wait for attorneys generals to clear us, and then we'll move forward with canonization. Because if that's the new standard, there are a number of popes I can think of, and bishops, who probably, they may want to rescind those sainthoods and rescind the beatifications, because their records might not be pure in this area. Just saying. Let's move on to something else, Phil, before I run out of time. As you know, the House of Representatives is moving toward an impeachment of President Trump. Speaker Pelosi today said she is ordering articles of impeachment to be drafted. This is a bit of her press conference when James Rosen of Sinclair asked her if she hates the president, and that might be driving this effort. Watch what she said.
Do you hate the president, Madam Speaker? Because
I don't hate anybody.
Representative
I
Cohen,
was raised in
reason
a
I asked.
Catholic house. We don't hate anybody, not anybody in the world. So don't you accuse me.
I did not accuse you.
You did. And as a Catholic, I resent your using the word hate in a sentence that addresses me. I don't hate anyone. I was raised in a way that is a heart full of love, and always prayed for the president. And I still pray for the president. I pray for the president all the time. So don't mess with me when it comes to words like that.
Your thoughts about wrapping this impeachment push in a religious garb?
It's not out of character for the Speaker. Nancy Pelosi has wrapped herself in the Catholic faith when it's convenient for her over the whole course of her political career. And it's disgraceful given how little attention she pays to the teachings of the Church when it comes to key moral issues involving the right to life, involving the nature of marriage. On those issues, she ignores and flouts the teachings of the Church. Then when it's to her political advantage, she wraps herself in the faith. She should be called on it.
We'll leave it there. Phil Lawler, thank you for your insight, your commentary, which can be found at catholicculture.org. And your most recent book, The Smoke of Satan, is available at bookstores everywhere.